We need some answers, and we need them right now. Either Mark Carney is the most absent-minded Prime Minister in Canadian history, or he thinks that Canadians are so naive that we won't recognize the blatant lies from his election campaign are now coming home to roost. And most of those lies circle around one country: China. Let's take a look.
There is some breaking news this hour about Canada and China, the trade war and the long diplomatic chill in relations between Ottawa and Beijing. Prime Minister Mark Carney is signaling a new approach this morning. We have images from Carney's meeting just a few hours ago with Xi Jinping on the sidelines of the APEC summit. It is his first as Prime Minister with the Chinese president. Right now, Canada is being squeezed between China and the U.S. in the global trade war. China is effectively using tariffs to keep out Canadian canola, pork, and seafood. It's an economically punishing retaliation for Canada following the U.S. in blocking Chinese vehicles, electric vehicles specifically, from the Canadian market. And for the Prime Minister, thawing relations with China is offering political challenges too, over issues like Chinese election interference and Beijing's detention of the two Michaels. Rafi Boudjikanian is traveling with the Prime Minister and covering his summits, and tells us there appears to be no breakthrough on tariffs from that meeting.
Ottawa had laid the stakes low for this meeting. Prime Minister Mark Carney calling it a careful reset to the relationship between Canada and a country where things had long gone sour. So those tariffs that Canada imposed on Chinese electric vehicle imports last year, they're still in place. And Beijing has made no word of lifting the ones it imposed in turn on Canada on its canola and pork imports. Nevertheless, Carney is calling the meeting a success.
This meeting today is long overdue. We now have a turning point in the relationship, a turning point that creates opportunities for Canadian families, for Canadian businesses, and Canadian workers, and also creates a path to address current issues. So very pleased with the outcome of the meeting. Our officials are instructed to work at pace on issues moving forward.
The last time a Canadian Prime Minister had a formal sit-down with Xi was 8 years ago, and Ottawa and Beijing have repeatedly clashed since, from Canada following a U.S. request to hold the CEO of a Chinese telecom firm under house arrest over fraud charges, and China retaliating by detaining 2 Canadians as prisoners for years, to China being found to interfere in 2 recent Canadian elections. However, observers say now is the right time for that relationship reset.
I don't think there's a Prime Minister out there who would have been in a position to have some kind of a reset of the relationship immediately.
Okay, folks. This one is it's disappointing. Now, let's just get the obvious right out of the way. We're at a point in the world's history where if you're not doing business with China, you're not doing well. What I mean by that is because of their basic slave labor that they have in the country, that's what allows certain things to be as cheap as they are. So all of these big companies that love practicing, ethical standards and DEI and positioning themselves as they're the messiahs of the righteous moral authority. A lot of them use this model where they just send stuff to China and they have people working for pennies a day or dollars a day, and that's how they get everything so cheap. So you have to do business with China. Unfortunately, that's where we are. However, there's a difference between allowing companies to do business with China, and the government actively cozying up to a regime that has been interfering in our country. Shame on CBC for not mentioning this point. Harassing our citizens, especially the diaspora communities in China. Good people that left China, entered our country through the old system, might I add, through the old immigration system. So they had to demonstrate their worth. They waited years to get here. They managed to get here, and they're trying to just build a life for them and their family and work hard, contribute tax dollars to our economy. And you have this country, China, using the United Front Work Department network to harass these people and try to get them to spy on Canadians, spy on officials, and influence our elections. Never mind the fact of all of the operations going on out in Vancouver that Sam Cooper has reported on. And if you haven't heard about that, he has a wonderful book, Willful Blindness. It will completely shock you if you have not read it. And you have Mark Carney in the election trying to say that, oh, we're not going to be doing business with China. There's countries out in Asia that we need to work with, but there are countries that share our values, and those don't include China. He was asked in the English leaders debate, what is the biggest threat to Canada right now? He said China. He didn't say tariffs. He didn't say the United States. He said China. And now you have him say, oh, this meeting was long overdue. Long overdue? How could it be long overdue if China's the biggest threat? There's a difference between meeting with China and saying, hey, knock it off with the whole foreign interference crap. That's one thing. But that wasn't your focus. Your focus was, oh, there's a man down south and he's acting like a totalitarian and, he's acting like a dictator. So we can't be doing business with them because they're applying tariffs with us. So what am I going to do? I'm going to turn and actually do business with somebody who is a dictator and who is acting in a totalitarian way and who is also leveraging tariffs on us. What? How do you square that, Carney? Trump was democratically elected. You can call Xi Jinping the president of China, but give me a break. He is not the president of China. China is under communist rule. And this is the problem with communist rule, because they're all champagne socialists. You have a bunch of elites sitting at the top saying, oh, we will rule the plebs, don't worry. But I thought communism at some point, there is not supposed to be a government. You're only supposed to be there temporarily. Yeah, well, we're not there yet. And we will never be there yet. That's the point. And all of this comes into sharp focus when, again, we are going to harken back to the stories that broke around the time of the early election, 2025. Carney lobbied mayor of Beijing ahead of Liberal leadership race. Yin Yong meets with chair of Brookfield Asset Management and vice chairman of BlackRock, respectively. On the afternoon of October 20th, this is 2024, folks, Yin Yong, mayor of Beijing, held separate meetings with Mark Carney, chair of Brookfield Asset Management and former governor of Bank of England, and Philip Hildebrand, vice chairman of BlackRock and former chairman of the governing board of the Swiss National Bank. Both guests came to Beijing for the annual conference of Financial Street Forum 2024. And here's Mr. Carney on the left, Xi Jinping on the right, and you see a bunch of other Chinese and Western businessmen there posing for a photo. So if China was so bad, if China doesn't share our values, if China is such a threat, why, even when you were the governor of the Bank of England, were you trying to seduce and establish some sort of influence inside of China? Why did you go there? Why was Brookfield so interested in getting in it? Because they don't give a damn about morals, they don't give a damn about foreign interference, and they don't give a damn about international law. The only thing that they're concerned of is making lots of money. And the issue with China is that you don't get access to their economy en masse if you don't have the permission to do so. And how do you get permission? Well, you need to cozy up to Xi Jinping and the Communist Party. That's how. So it really makes you wonder, why was Mark Carney in China, aside from securing that $250 million loan for Brookfield Asset Management? Why was he in China talking to the mayor and talking to other senior Chinese officials, and then not even a month or two later, he resigns from Brookfield and starts his quest to become the leader of the Liberal Party and therefore Prime Minister of Canada, and then goes on to the election telling everybody how bad China is and we're never going to do business with them, and then 6 months later we're trying to establish a strategic partnership with them. He's over there saying, hey, we need to repair all of our relationships, we need to cool this chill or warm this chill, and this is a conversation that needs to be long overdue, and Canadian families are going to be so happy about this.
This meeting today is long overdue.
Is it your belief that we should be increasing our trade with China?
There are partners in Asia that we can build deeper ties. The partners in Asia that share our values don't include China.
When we think about India and China, my effort there was to put on the table a strategic partnership framework.
This meeting today is long overdue.
The partners in Asia that share our values don't include China.
What's going on? The problem is we're not really able to find out. But Canadians everywhere should be scratching their heads saying, you were saying this back in March and April, and now you're saying this. What's going on? And we need some answers, and we need them right now. This is too big to just ignore. And it's not like we're doing business with England. It's not like we're doing business, with Germany or something like that. This is a country that is number one in terms of national security threats to Canada, has threatened the families of members of Parliament. Michael Chong, Conservative MP, has threatened Aaron O'Toole, former Conservative leader, has threatened Jenny Kwan, NDP member of Parliament. Why? Because they've spoken out and voted against Chinese interests. And Mark Carney doesn't care. Why doesn't he care? There's too many questions. What are in these funds that he has in offshore accounts? What are in there? What is in there? Do they have anything related to the Chinese economy? Don't know. Do they have anything to related to Brookfield and their interest in China? Don't know. What else did he talk to these Chinese officials about while he was there, right before he launched his bid for Liberal leadership and Prime Minister of Canada? Don't know. There are too many unknowns here. And this should make Canadians very nervous, especially if you're the Canadians that voted for Mark Carney. And the lack of transparency, it stinks to high heaven. So, make sure you keep an eye on Mark Carney and what we're doing with China, because at some point, all will be revealed. And I have a feeling Canadians are not going to like it one bit.